So who is expecting that I'm going to ask questions? I like to ask questions, don't I? We're going to start with a couple questions, then we're going to take a vote. We're going to take a vote. And the vote will not be on how long the homily is. That's not what the vote is. But question number 1 for our First Holy Communion children, who can define for me the word original? What does it mean to be original? The original. We're going to come down to the seats all the way in the back. Don't worry, you're not spared yet. All right, what does it mean to be original?
Original means to be like the first thing.
The first thing? What were you going to say?
I was going to say the first thing.
She stole your answer. The first kind. And we had a couple other hands. What were we going to say? The first thing? One of a kind. Original could be one of a kind. The first thing. I told you weren't spared. What was your answer going to be? Older things, traditional things. Yeah, all very good answers. And so the original means like the first thing, maybe an older thing. And what does the word copy mean? So if we have the original, we might have a copy. What does the word copy mean? What does it mean?
It means like doing something that someone else did.
Doing something someone else did. What were you going to say?
Like replicate or pretend to be another person that you're not.
Replicate or pretend to be another person you are not. Wow. Excellent. A+ on vocabulary. Wow. Replicate or pretend to be a person you are not. There's a whole homily just right there. What were you going to say? You make more things of something, right? Last word here. What were you going to say? Duplicate. So we have things that are original, and then we have things that are copies, right? Meaning we duplicated or replicated them. This is only April. You didn't get to the R's on the Word of Day calendar either. I'm impressed. All right, so we know the difference between original and duplicate or copy. What do you think? Is it better to be the original or is it better to be the copy? What do you think? Better to be the original or the copy? Original. What do you think? Original. What do you think? They're block voting on this side. Okay. And for all of our First Holy Communion children, what do you think? Is it better to be the original or the copy? Who says original? Who says copy? It's better to be the copy. Okay, I think almost unanimous vote. Well, we're going to take a few votes here, and you're going to vote by standing up when I ask the question, okay? Because there are things sometimes that we use, right? Products that we buy, things that we use, and sometimes we can pick the original, sometimes we can pick the copy. So I want to see what you would prefer. So who likes ice cream? I love ice cream, okay? Now we got Perry's ice cream made right here in Western New York. This is One Buffalo. You can choose whatever flavor you like. But Perry's ice cream, excellent ice cream, says right on the label, made in Buffalo. Now, if you had a choice between that or this lovely artificially flavored. Now, this is genuine artificial flavor. You can't get that everywhere. Artificially flavored vanilla ice cream. Which one would you choose? So I want you to stand up if you would rather have the Perry's ice cream. Who would vote for the Perry's ice cream? And, all right, have a seat. Does anybody vote for the genuinely artificial vanilla? We'll even throw in some artificial Hershey syrup. Okay. What was that? Okay. All right. I think, though, the vote stood for Perry's. Let's try another one. Who likes Doritos? I love Doritos. Who likes Doritos? Who likes Doritos? They're wonderful. Now, if you had your choice, would you rather eat these Doritos, or would you rather have these lovely no-name nacho chips? Which one would you prefer? Now stand up if you prefer the Doritos, the original. Who prefers the original Doritos? I actually like mine with bison onion dip, also made in Buffalo. All right, have a seat. Who would prefer to have the nacho cheese replica? A couple people. All right, a couple people. Have a seat. Now here's another one. How many of you wear sneakers ever? Who wears sneakers? I know today you probably have shoes on, right? It's a shoes kind of a day. So if you needed new sneakers, would you rather have, first of all, these beautiful blue sneakers from Walmart, $16.99, I priced them. These beautiful blue sneakers from Walmart, or would you rather have the Nike Air Force sneakers? Okay, so who votes for the blue sneakers? The replica, no name, other than they're available at Walmart. Okay, we have a couple who prefer that. Who would prefer to have the Nike Air Force sneakers? They're quite popular right now. Absolutely, quite popular. All right, now this one's for the parents. This one's for the parents, grandparents, all of the adults who are here. First of all, how many of you are like me that the very first thing you do in the morning, of course, after you make the sign of the cross that you have a new day, you go for the coffee? Who does that? Who does? You do that. That's a problem. All right. So, and I'm going to guess that some of you on the way to work stop to pick up coffee. I know driving down Maple Road, there is a line on Maple Road sometimes outside of the unnamed coffee shop there. I will not name names yet. So for all of the adults, you get to vote too by standing. For that morning coffee, would you prefer to have this classic roast, great value, $6.98 for 22 ounces? You can't go wrong. Classic roast, great value. Oh, so it's 30.5 ounces, even better. Or would you rather have our own Tim Hortons, huh? So adults, who votes for the great value, 30.5 ounces for $6.99? Anybody? A couple? Oh, Morgan, I knew I could count on you. You like a good bargain just like me. It's great, absolutely, absolutely. How many vote for Tim Hortons? Tim Hortons, right? All right, I kind of figured. Now, how many of you drink pop? Anybody drink pop? Pop is less and less popular with some of our young people. All right, now if you wanted pop, how many of you would like Coca-Cola, original taste? Or would you prefer to have this, fresh cola? Now it is fresh. It is fresh. Fresh cola. So for our First Communion kids, stand up if you prefer to have the regular Coca-Cola. How many of you would prefer to have the fresh cola? I mean, it's fresh. You can't fight that. It's fresh. It says so right there, fresh. All right, I don't see anybody standing for that. Well, us older people, how many of you remember the Coca-Cola commercial? What was the line for Coca-Cola years ago? It's the real thing, right? Coca-Cola was the real thing. And what do we come and celebrate today with and for our children? We celebrate that who? Jesus Christ is the real thing, right? And that's what we're celebrating for you in your First Holy Communion. We're celebrating the fact that Jesus is real and that Jesus is with us. And we're celebrating the fact that Jesus loves each of us so very much that he wants to become our very food. Jesus is real. And so as we're celebrating First Holy Communion, I know that we are at St. Gregory Church, 200 St. Gregory Court, Williamsville, New York, 14221. I know that. But when we celebrate communion and we come to receive the Eucharist, it is as if we're transported in time. And we go back to that upper room in Jerusalem where Jesus celebrated the Last Supper with his apostles. Part of our faith is we really believe there's one Eucharist, the original, not a copy. What is it we're celebrating with and for you today? The fact that the Eucharist is original. It is Jesus himself, his body, his blood for us today. Not an imitation, not a copy, but it's the original. And no matter where we go in the world, we become one with each other in Jesus because of the power of receiving the real Jesus, the original Jesus, God himself, in the Eucharist. Think about that for a moment. Now, who can tell me who this person is? Who is this person? Who knows who this is? Who is this? Carlo Acutis, absolutely correct. How many of you know who Carlo Acutis is? All right, Carlo Acutis has become kind of one of my new heroes, you know. So let me tell you a little bit about Carlo Acutis. Carlo Acutis was born on May the 3rd of 1991. And so his birthday would be coming up right now, soon. May the 3rd, 1991. He died when he was 15 years of age. And he died on October the 12th of 2006. Although Carlo was born in London, England, not Ontario, he lived his whole life really in Milan, Italy. And Carlo, the Acutis family, is a very, very wealthy, prominent family. And Carlo was baptized when he was a little boy in London. And then they moved to Milan. And Carlo's family, as I said, was a family of quite a bit of wealth. And so Carlo had a nanny. And his nanny was Polish. I have to throw that in because I'm Polish. And his nanny was Polish. And Carlo's family was a family that did not go to church. They didn't go to church. They didn't practice their faith. But this Polish nanny did. And his nanny taught him a lot about a relationship with Jesus and the saints. What I didn't tell you is that Carlo, in October of 2020, was beatified, which means he's on the way to becoming a saint. He is going to be the first saint of the millennial generation. And why is this 15-year-old from Milan already blessed and on his way to being canonized? I can explain that. This Polish nanny taught him about his faith, and from the time he was a little boy, could just start walking. Carlo always, when he would walk through Milan with his parents, always insisted any church they walked by, that they had to stop and go into the church. And Carlo would run up the aisle in the church and go to the crucifix, and he would kiss the cross. And then he would tell his parents, you know, we have to go get flowers for the lady, meaning the Blessed Mother. And the parents didn't really understand where all this was coming from because they themselves really didn't practice the faith at all. And when Carlo was 7 years of age, Carlo asked to receive his first communion. And his parents admit it wasn't even on our plans to do that because we weren't really church-going people. But they allowed him to make his first Holy Communion. A real cool thing about Carlo is that from that day forward, from the day he was 7 years of age and made his first Holy Communion, so he's just a little younger than all of you, he went to Mass every single day on his own. He would get up and walk to church, and he would go to Mass. And the priests who knew him in his parish said that it wasn't enough that he just came to Mass. When Mass was done, he would sit right where you are sitting, basically here, in the bench closest to the tabernacle, and he would just sit there and he would pray. And Carlo not only went to Mass and sat before the Blessed Sacrament in prayer, but he had a great love for the poor. Now, how many of you think you might, just maybe, might get 1 or 2 gifts today for making your first communion? How many of you think you just maybe might get something, right? I still have the watch that I received from my godfather on my first communion, and it still works. And I still use it. So, Carlo, when he was 7 years old, going to daily mass, he saw this homeless man who kind of was living in front of the church. And without telling anyone, he took his own money and went and bought him a sleeping bag so the man would at least be warm. And as Carlo started getting older, he was going into the inner city of Milan, and he would serve the needs of the poor. And often as he got older, he took his friends, especially as he became a teenager. He'd invite all of his friends to come with him to go and work at a soup kitchen or serve in various ways the poor. And Carlo, when he died, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And he was given 1 week to live, which is about what he lived. And at the time of his death, the church was overflowing with people. They came, all of his friends and family, of course, but all of the homeless of Milan came because they knew him so well, and they knew that he loved them, and of course he loved them, and they loved him. Well, the popularity of this young man kind of grew, and his holiness was known. And a few years after his death, as he became a little more popular because of his holiness, a relic, meaning something he owned, it was a t-shirt of his, started traveling around to different parishes for people to touch and to pray and to see. And one little boy, he was only 2 or 3 years old, if I remember right. He was born with a deformed, malfunctioning pancreas, and there was nothing the doctors could really do. He touched the t-shirt of Carlo, and that day he was completely healed. His pancreas is completely perfect, and no one could explain. And so that miracle led to him being beatified, and Carlo's become quite a popular person. First of all, his great love for the poor and service of the poor. And secondly, he was a computer genius. Even those in the computer industry couldn't believe the things he knew and knew how to do. And what he did, he took his talent of knowing all these things about computers, and what did he do? He made the very first website that described and explained all of the Eucharistic miracles throughout the world, through the history of the world. And you can go on that website, click on the map, and it'll tell you what Eucharistic miracles took place there and pictures of it, the whole history. And Carlo, after he died, people started to think about his great love for the Eucharist, and he had certain lines that he liked to say. How many of you have certain phrases you like to say all the time, over and over again? You know, he had some lines he really loved. And just a couple of them to end, I'll share with you. First of all, he said, all people are born as originals, but many die as photocopies. Huh? All people are born as originals. You are an original. Every single one of us created by God to be original. And we all kind of voted, most of us said, no, the original is better than the copy, right? The original is better than the copy. And so God created each of us to be original. All of you making your first communion, each one of you are original in God's eyes. And God gave each of you, each of us, all of us, our talents and our abilities. But what happens sometimes, instead of staying on that road of being an original close to Jesus, sometimes we start listening to other people and other ways of living, and we kind of put some things that Jesus taught aside, and we choose other things. We become a photocopy then. We're not the original anymore. So the first thing for your first Holy Communion maybe to remember from Carlo is to be an original, and as you are right now. Another line, which is probably the most popular line of his, the Eucharist is the highway to heaven. Carlo often said that receiving the Eucharist, which he did every day, that is going to allow him to get to the kingdom of heaven. It was the road to heaven. And that, along with the final quote that I'll give you today, is, the more Eucharist we receive, the more we become like Jesus, so that on earth we will have a foretaste of heaven. The more Eucharist we receive, the more we will be like Jesus, and we'll have the foretaste of heaven. So from this day forward, you can receive communion every day. And the more communion you receive, the more you're going to become like Jesus. And the more communion that all of us receive, the more masses we celebrate, the more and more we start to think, the more and more we start to act, the more and more we start to completely be just like Jesus, to be that original for him in the world today. And so as we celebrate First Holy Communion, we pray that you see each and every day that you receive communion, the more and more that you're going to become like Jesus in the world today. And I bet you would agree that people who are just like Jesus, somebody like a Carlo, who would have thought in 2006 when he died that a 15-year-old teenager from Milan would be known throughout the whole world? It was because he became more and more like Jesus. One last word, and then we'll move forward with the Mass. One of our teenagers, he's a freshman now at St. Joe's, Cubby Weil, the brother of our two cantors today. Cubby is a freshman, and when he made his first Holy Communion here at St. Gregory's, he started with a calendar, and he marks on a calendar every single time he receives the Eucharist. And yesterday he was at high school hangout, and I went up to Cubby and I said, tomorrow's First Holy Communion, I need the count and the amount. 681 times he has received communion. Maybe a beautiful challenge for all of our children making First Communion today. Maybe do something similar. You know, get a nice little calendar, and every time you receive communion, mark it on that calendar. And the more that you do that, the more you will be just like Jesus and on that highway to heaven.